After finishing my rehousing project, I was mildly displeased with the look of the whole set. And on top of that, carbon fiber infused filaments tend to shed loose particles when being handled, which can obviously be problematic, especially with optics. So, applying a couple of layers of primer acrylic coating and a nice layer of paint should solve these issues with loose particles. This just might be my brand of filament and others may perform worse. In any case, I'm using Polymaker Fiberon PET CF17. But honestly, even when rubbing my fingers intentionally on the parts before any coating, the notorious dust and needles are almost non-existent. And I did a bit of sanding on these, so it should be far worse in my case. I did clean my prints with rubbing alcohol after printing, but I sincerely doubt this got rid of all those little loose particles. I'm not gonna feign deep knowledge when it comes to painting. I've only spray painted a couple of things for my car before, so do check out some other videos with more experienced people. Before starting with the primers and painting, I had to pick a color. First, I tried this one. It's nice and textured, but it lacked pizzazz. I needed something more like this. Pure Petzval vibes. So obviously, first we gotta apply a few layers of primer. I was told to go slow, spread it evenly, and do 3 to 4 layers, 10 to 15 minutes apart. Oh, and by the way, I'm not using anything expensive. I ventured into the first shop, went to the stall, and picked a couple of primers and colors. Of course, I did a couple of test runs on my failed prototypes and did a little sanding beforehand, but nothing too crazy. For the focus gear rings, I painted the whole thing gold, but for the rear parts, I left the insides with the primer only to avoid any reflections creeping up in the image. It might not seem like there is any use case where you can have reflections being cast onto the optical elements, but there is. The closer you focus, the more rear element retracts inside the printed mount. So yeah, you can see how gold color could pose some problems here. We need the internals nice and matte black. Unexpectedly, I found an odd sense of peace in the process of painting. Patiently adding layers while avoiding dripping buildup was strangely soothing. It took me 4 to 5 hours for the whole set, and I've learned a lot in the process. Next time I'll probably 3D print custom holders and focus more on each individual piece. Or, if I need it done quickly, I'll just pay a professional to do it. After finishing the painting, I waited for 72 hours before reassembling the lenses. I tried doing this after 24 hours, but when assembled the pieces were sticking to each other, so I left it outside for a couple of days more. The result is extremely tacky and it might invoke some people to rob you, but that's a small price to pay for the bling. It is kind of reminiscent of old Petzval design, famous for its bokeh, and even the old Vivitar Series 1 lenses. After I painted the lens caps antique grey, I'm not being facetious, that's really the name, antique grey. There was only one thing left to do. Logo for my product. I imported .svg logo design into Blender, extruded it, added a boolean modifier on a fat plane, and added a couple of holding bridges to keep the islands from falling out. I 3D printed this as a stencil, and after I sprayed a couple of layers, I've seen that in order to make this more clear, I had to either change the nozzle to 0.2 millimeters and reprint the stencil, since this design was a little bit too tiny and fine for the 0.4 millimeter nozzle. I avoided this by changing the design and it turned out super clean. I'm very pleased with it. This is pretty much it. They're nice, tacky, and I'm sure Petzval would be proud. I had to make a couple of more stencils for the front lens cap, so it's easier for me to differentiate the lenses from my bag. I was obviously a bit sloppy with the 85mm one. As you can see, it is a bit off center. This could be remedied with a stencil holder to keep it nice and center every single time, but at this point I was a bit tired from the whole ordeal and I'm completely fine with this imperfection. This is the list of all Rolleinar lenses from this series, but I've decided I'm not gonna force it. If they pop up for the right price, I might just go and complete the whole set. Otherwise, I'll be focusing on my work and other ideas. And I have to reiterate, the apprehension toward carbon fiber filaments seems a bit blown out of proportion to me. In any case, I'll be testing these in the real world with my clients, and if it turns out I was wrong to trust carbon fiber so much, I'll just make an update video on it. I promise.